Let's go, people! Let's go! It's Prognosis negative time!
Hi, this is Eric.
This is Carl.
And this is Isaac.
And welcome back. It's Prognosis Negative, episode 59. Finally, the conclusion of our Tron journey with Isaac, who, of course, when he stepped in, had seen nothing Tron until a couple months ago. Let's see, we had Tron 82 on the feed, Tron Legacy, of course, and then 4 episodes covering the entire 19-episode season of Tron Uprising.
Sweet! How did I miss that party? You guys been covering all that stuff?
Well, we felt, Tron in itself is niche. Of course, you know Tron, obviously, Carl. But then the Disney series is even more niche.
It's awesome. I loved it. I really, it broke my heart when they canceled it after one season.
Yeah. And so after 6 episodes, this is our 7th. And who knows? Maybe I'll come up with something for an 8th Tron episode. Maybe we'll review the video games. We even talked about the 2 Taylor Swift music videos that are loosely Tron inspired. Yeah, we did it all. And we did the 2008 Comic-Con trailer teaser test footage as well.
That's good stuff.
So finally, the whole reason we started this journey in the first place, and it had to be last because Isaac refused to watch Ares until he watched all that other stuff I just mentioned.
Culmination, it's nice.
Strap into your chairs and get ready to be digitized.
I'm standing.
Since time began, man has gazed at the stars and he has wondered, am I alone? So much talk of AI and big tech today. Virtual worlds, what are they going to look like? When will we get there? Well, folks, we're not going there. They are coming here. I would like you to meet Ares, the ultimate soldier. He's biblically strong, lightning fast, supremely intelligent. And if he is struck down on the battlefield, I will simply make you another.
You think you're in control of this? You're not. What are you?
I'm looking for something. Something I do not understand.
Hang on!
A malfunctioning program that wants to live. Why is that?
It's just a feeling.
Fascinating.
Isaac, was this the movie you were dreaming of, hoping for?
Good question. Again, what I had done, Carl, prior, though, I think some context is needed, at least for Carl, even though the audience, the listeners know, if they listen to the previous ones, they'll know what I had done. Roughly 2 days before Ares was released, I guess the end of or the beginning of October, they released the soundtrack, the official soundtrack to the movie itself by Nine Inch Nails. And being a fan of Nine Inch Nails myself, and then obviously wanting to watch this film, I was like, okay, I'll slightly spoil myself, not with the titles of each track, but with the overall soundtrack itself. And with that, with listening to that twice, oh boy, Carl, it was you know, the eye of the beholder. Like, my imagination soared. My imagination created this in like this a digital landscape, not even something else, something further, something where I thought we were going even like beyond the grid, not in the real world necessarily, but I thought we were like, because I don't know if I'd seen the trailers yet when the recognizer is in the city. And I thought, oh, we were like creating a new species potentially within the grid. I thought we were going to places that we like wouldn't have seen before. I just thought, oh, this is going to be like a journey that I would not be able to comprehend like on screen, and probably be disappointed if they didn't do that. But I did not lead those expectations to be, you know, solid. I didn't want those to be the real thoughts and what this was going to be, and this movie was not those. But this definitely was not the movie that I was expecting, but I'll at least say that I was pleasantly like enjoying it.
All right. Carl, now, obviously, like me, you're very familiar with the source material on film, etc. Before this movie even came out, maybe you had seen a trailer, maybe you hadn't, I don't know. Either way, were you looking forward to seeing Ares? Were you trepidatious? Or, I don't know, what was your feeling going in?
After Tron Legacy, I felt that they really needed to give it one more try. You know, when that movie ended, it was almost there. It was pretty. I love the soundtrack. You know, I knew what they were trying to do with it, but it didn't quite deliver it. But it was still a really enjoyable experience, and it was a place that I like to visit. So when Tron Legacy ended, immediately after Tron Legacy ended, I was excited about them trying it again, bring a lot of the characters back, fleshing out what they had created with Legacy. And when years went by, and it was pretty clear that they had kind of, I don't know, you want to say put Tron on the back burner. I'm not going to say given up on Tron, obviously, but they had really put, Tron away. I was kind of like, well, I guess we're not going to see that again. And, how quick they were to get rid of Tron Uprising. So I was really excited about that generation of characters, that definition of the world they had made. I was very excited about that, and I really wanted to see them move forward. And then there was this long lull again. Has it been 10 years? Has it been 10 years since Legacy?
Well, Legacy came out in 2010.
15 years? Jeez. Okay.
15 years.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember this from back then, Carl, because obviously Legacy came out. It was a modest success, but not what Disney wanted. Mm-hmm. But I remember, like, the director was already saying, the director of Legacy was saying, like, just months after it came out, oh yeah, like, we're definitely working on a third movie, nothing confirmed or anything, but we're working on it. And they would continue to work on it. And I think he was working a lot with Garrett Hedlund, who played Sam,
right,
and maybe a little bit with Olivia Wilde. And they kind of came up with this story, this continuation that they kind of collaborated on and were all into, presented it to Disney. Disney had greenlit it. Fast forward to, I can't remember if it was like the end of 2013 or early 2014, but the director or someone like tweeted, oh, like, it's official. Like, we begin shooting like in 2 months. Like, there was an actual date given of when shooting, and I think it was going to be called Tron Ascension.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And obviously it was going to pick up right after Legacy. So like 2 months before that, he gave the date out of when they commenced shooting. And I can't remember what happened. Was that like a strike year or something with some guild? But something in the real world happened in that 2 months. And then Like he just put it out like it's done. Like it's not going to happen. Like we're finished.
Yeah.
That was crazy because I was obviously following that news, and yeah, that was rough.
So, my enthusiasm had been tempered. I, had put it away and had moved on, and I had heard rumors of it, coming back and then not coming back and then not. So I was just like, I'll see it when I believe it. When this latest incarnation went into production, it actually went into production, I kind of perked up a little bit, and they said it's going to be starring Jared Leto, and I said, uh-oh. He has a reputation, and I don't mean personally. I don't know the guy. I don't know what's going on. But I mean, when he shows up in series, he kind of ends the franchises. If you think back to the last two major franchises he's been a part of, after his contribution, they kind of ended. So I'm not the biggest Jared Leto fan, and when they said that he was going to be headlining the new Tron movie, I got very concerned. One, because fans are kind of hit and miss with this guy, and historically, what has happened when he's put in these franchises, some interesting things have occurred. So, independent of the story, independent of the before I saw any of the previous, any previews, when I heard that he was involved in it, I was like, I don't know if that is the best start for trying to bring Tron back. It's just that introduces a lot of chaos into this. But I said, all right, well, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it, I'm going to let it go. I knew I was going to see Tron Ares, so I didn't watch any previews. I didn't see a single preview. I kind of avoided them, actually, because, Eric, you know how we are. If we see one or two little things, it kind of gives it away.
Yes.
I had made the decision I was going to go see it, so you don't have to sell me. Just bring the movie out. So I kind of avoided the previews. So when I sat down and watched it in the theater on the pre-opening night, that was the first that I'd seen of the world, seen the characters, seen of what they were going to do. Now, I knew they were bringing it into the real world, and I was curious about that. Again, I'm an old school Tron person. I really like the worlds inside of the computer. I like the old-timey Tron world inside the computer and how exciting, and the analogies that were made from the real computer world to what we saw in there. And then when you see it in Tron Legacy, the crispness and newness of that world using the best technology that they had, really, it was a pretty space. So I liked, being inside the computer in both the Tron movies. So with the premise being outside of the world, outside of the Tron space and in the real world, I was like, how are they going to do this? How are they going to do this? So we got Jared Leto. I don't know. And we're going to spend the majority of the time in the real world. I don't know. But I'm going to give him a shot. So that is how I went into this. I hadn't seen any previews. I was concerned about the lead and the fact that it was supposed to be set in the real world. Even at the end of Legacy, I was like, "Whoa, what are we going to do with this now?" When they brought Olivia Wilde in, I was like, how are we going to make this work? So I was a little concerned.
Let me go ahead and give my take pre-Ares going into it, since the audience now kind of knows where both of you were coming from. For myself, I had seen the trailer once earlier in the year, and just because I was seeing something at the movies and I didn't have a choice. And prior to seeing that trailer, I guess I had heard Jared Leto's name, but I didn't know, and I heard that probably Bridges would return, but I didn't know anything else outside of that because I avoided any type of, production news or anything like that, or who the director was or anything. Except I knew it wasn't the same director as Legacy. And I saw that trailer and I was trying to, avert my eyes. But with what little I saw in the trailer, I did not like it all. Because I could tell, there's a lot of real world. And I had the same feelings as Carl. Like, I love being in and on the grid in these movies. But number two, from what little I saw, it just had that look that reminds me of when you have like an original property, original IP by some director, and maybe they do the second one, and then somebody else comes in and does the third. Think Creed 1 and 2, and then 3. Think Terminator 1 and 2, and then 3. Think the Star Wars Kelvin timeline.
Nice.
1 and 2, and then someone else 3. Of course, that one, that's a different conversation that I think we've had before. I mean, how it turned out. And it just had that look that, okay, I get this is supposed to be, in the Tron movie universe, but it looked so different stylistically. I mean, it's subtle, but to me, it doesn't feel subtle. How different it looked. It looked in the trailer is very actiony. Have you seen the trailer now, Carl?
Yes, I have.
Okay, it's very actiony and and you don't hardly see anything of the grid at all. And of course, I was hoping maybe I'd see a legacy, not the movie legacy, but a legacy character. I think they showed Flynn for a second, but I didn't see Boxleitner, Allen, or what's his name, Cillian Murphy, or something like that, Olivia Wilde. And so I thought, oh man, this doesn't look good. Like, this already looks so bad to me. But I'm gonna watch it regardless. And let's say that, and I'll probably talk about this more later in the conversation, but that trailer was a total misdirection for somewhat of my age generation who loves Tron. That trailer was a movie I was not interested in seeing, but it also, I don't believe, really represented or advertised the movie that I did see in actuality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
After seeing the movie and then going back to watch the trailer, it did not seem to align to what was delivered. That's typical of trailers these days, but particularly in the world of Tron, there were a lot of expectations, and the trailer didn't seem to try to address any of that.
Yeah, the trailer looked to me like it was going to kind of be, I guess Terminator 3 is the best example out of the ones I presented earlier, where, when I watched Terminator 1 and 2, there was a lot of things to think about after the fact, like philosophical, questions of, future apocalypse, technology apocalypse, etc. But then Terminator 3 just 100% feels like a popcorn movie. Mm-hmm. And I know some people would argue Legacy is kind of a popcorn movie as well. That conversation for a previous episode, but I didn't think there was going to be substance in this movie, like what I think of as like philosophical or storytelling substance. That's what the trailer screamed to me. I thought it was just going to be like generic action sequence after generic action sequence. No, that is not at all the experience I had. So, who would like to lead with some of their initial reactions on this movie?
Isaac, you're the newbie. Hit it.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's looking at Isaac.
Newbie, yeah, but at the same time, Carl, I feel like you should, give a hand.
He always likes to go last.
That's not okay. This is different. Because first off, Carl, I will do another podcast with you on Tron Uprising. I have no problem with that. I apologize if we didn't include you in that conversation, but I have no problem with redoing the whole thing over again because I would love to hear your thoughts on that. However, given that I've done five previous episodes on Tron, I feel like I should give you the microphone for now.
6 previous, and if that Uprising return happens, of course I want to sit in on that.
Oh, well, this is including you. Don't worry, you're fine.
All right. But okay, you guys decide or flip a bit and we'll see what comes up.
A bit.
False. No. All right. So I agree with Eric's initial, uh, uh, you know, evaluation of how things felt going into it. Even when the movie started, it did not feel quite like the previous two Tron movies. And I was trying to figure out how I felt about that. I mean, I know it was in the real world and all that kind of stuff, but it's something about the feel. The original Tron movie had a strong philosophical computer analog, and they were trying to introduce you to that world. It was synchronized with our modern interest in video games. We were introducing people to concepts of what was inside of a computer. So there was this, other level of story that runs alongside of the simpler story, which is what made the original Tron so charming. You've got, the silly, light Disney story that is going on of, pirates and saving the girl, and then you've got this is how computers work, and this is what's going on in your video games, and this is, how you can control what's going on in the computer. It was very exciting to see those two things. With Legacy, we had really embraced the advanced computing graphics technology. We were really literally stepping into the web, into the computer, into the network when we were doing all the de-aging technology, whatever you might think of it. But think of the novelty of it at the time that we were watching it. We were resurrecting characters that we hadn't seen in years. So once again, there was a novelty. There was I'm not going to say it's not as simple as a gimmick. It's like there's an analog that's going on. We were getting used to the idea of, digitizing people in terms of, de-aging them and bringing these characters in. We were getting used to the fact that we had interconnected computing technology, all what the web could do and all that kind of stuff. We made a couple of jokes about that in Tron Legacy, as well as a tip of the hat to the original Tron that I thought was very respectful. So between the high-end graphics, the analog of artificial intelligence and in digitizing people in appearance. Again, there were two levels of storytelling that was going on. There was the father, the son tracking out his father, and the hero rescue going on, saving the girl, and then there was this analog with modern technology and what was going on that was really, really interesting. With Ares, I was looking and, kind of expecting, hoping that there would be this similar kind of depth. Now, admittedly, this idea of 3D printing, bringing what was digital into the real world, okay, I see that. And I think that was a pretty exciting analog to consider. The idea of artificial intelligence, look, we've had that in the movie since 82. So, the fact that there are AIs and that's not strong enough to make it novel. But, okay, this time we're going to come into the real world, start with 3D printing and all that technology. We'll also have the idea of, sort of like evil billionaire CEOs. All right, that's always popular. So how are we going to make this fresh? How are we going to make this work with Ares? And so that is kind of the foundation that they started with, that they began this with. We're in the real world. Again, how are we going to make this work? Now, I think the original two Tron movies had a bit more polish on them. Just something about the richness of the production value was a little higher. Eric has got the right analogy where I see what they're doing in this, but it felt a little bit like, the first time they've gone with a different director, or it felt a little bit like the European take on Tron. It was just something was a little bit off. And so I could feel that throughout the movie, that it something about it was a little too rushed. Something about it was a little too funny, it was trying to be funny, something. And so I found that a little bit off-putting. But the broader story that was going on in terms of trying to bring these, well, not ISOs, but trying to bring these entities into the real world. I thought that was an interesting hook. I thought the technology that they were trying to use was interesting. There was an interesting take on that. And I gotta say, the motorcycle chase is probably the best part in this movie, and it was the proper mix of the simulated Tron world, bringing it into the real world in a way that felt very, very real, very tangible, very interesting. I really, really liked that cycle chase, and I mean, I liked it better than the cycles from Legacy. So they did that very, very well. That's my quick take. That's my quick take for now.
Do you want me to go next, Isaac, or you want to go next?
By all means, please. Yeah, no, because you've been salivating at wanting to talk about this film for weeks now. So I don't want to keep you from talking.
Oh, well, to discuss it as much as to listen to others, but real quick, just because I had to go back and confirm. Actually, I forgot how interesting it was, the cancellation of the original third Tron movie. So when they began working on it, the story, like 2011 or so, they brought back the same writers who wrote Tron Legacy. And let's see, last name Kitsis and Horowitz. And, they wrote the story for the third movie. They actually left the production in 2012 because they went on to develop the ABC series Once Upon a Time. And then they got someone else to write a screenplay based on their story. And, Disney announced that production had been greenlit in March of actually 2015 is when it was greenlit. But they announced it was canceled in May of 2015, and supposedly the reason being is because Disney released their live action Tomorrowland and it bombed, and supposedly that is why they cut production entirely on Tron.
It's ridiculous. I don't see what they have to do with each other.
Other than Disney failing it, I see it as a situation like what Disney had with the animated film. What was it? Treasure Planet?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, Atlantis, and then Treasure Planet. And I think Disney was like, okay, we're not doing this anymore. We're just gonna.
Science fiction doesn't work, so we'll try and pivot somewhere else.
Right? Yeah. Disney has a weird history with science fiction, especially if we count like the Buzz Lightyear movie as well. And what was the other one? The recent one that was like
Elo? No, Elo?
No, like the land. I can't remember if it was Pixar or Disney. The one that was sort of like Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Oh yeah, Strange Worlds.
Yeah. So yeah, Disney has a weird track record when it comes to trying to produce sci-fi for them. Oh, not to mention the black hole. But anyway, so all right. I know what Carl's talking about with the look, because that's the first thing that stuck out at me in the first scene of the movie. Like, kind of having, he described it as kind of European. I know what he means by that. But also, what I noticed right away, which was a bad sign in the opening scene and the opening minutes of the movie, this started becoming a trend in the 20 teens. The first movie I remember that had this technique, which really bothered me, was the third Thor movie. And it wasn't the whole entire movie. It was just the scene with Thor and Loki talking to like the ghost of what's their father's name?
Odin,
yeah. This scene they had when he was sort of saying goodbye. That one scene in the movie, it's so obvious that the three actors are in front of a green screen like the entire time. And I dislike that one scene in the rest of the movie, which I, for the most part, really liked, visually, technically, etc. And then we get all the crazy digital stuff in the climax of Black Panther. And I really did not like that, the original Black Panther. And then after that time, just movies across the board started getting really crazy and adventurous with their green screening. And not to mention, not only movies, but it was happening all the time in sitcoms and regular like drama primetime network television, where everything was just this super obvious green screen. And part of the reason you could tell, because as opposed to green screen in the old days, or even rear projection, back projection, you could tell because the thing they were green screening in front of was always like a digital background, digital scenery. Even if it was out of focus, like in a car, you could still very obviously tell it was digital and then out of focus. And this is something that wasn't noticeable in the first Creed movie, but became more and more noticeable with each sequel. As much as I loved the first two, it was very distracting. And it's just in productions all over the place. And that's exactly 100% how this movie looks, especially in the opening scene in Alaska. And just about anytime they're... or like Sinners, which I saw recently for the first time. Every time they're riding in their car, it's 100% digital, out of defocused backgrounds. And I really love that movie too, Sinners, but it's just distracting. So that was really bad for the movie to open that way. Thankfully, there wasn't a ton of that later, or if there was, it wasn't noticeable, because obviously most of the outdoor scenes that happen in the movie, aside from Alaska, are in and around Vancouver, and for the most part looks like Vancouver, with some drone shots and some other things. And so, yeah, thankfully that was not so much of an issue later. But yeah, I don't know. That's just my hot opening take, I guess.
I guess for me, when I first saw the trailer, when I first saw this Ares trailer, I was thinking, oh, so they finally done it. So what I pieced together from like, okay, we're bringing in more programs, or bringing programs, into the real world. We're doing what Clue wanted to do from Legacy. I'm like, that's a cool idea. We're gonna now have the his plan is finally going to work. I don't know like how it's going to work, but with maybe there was a new what is it? The idea? Well, okay, so obviously by the end of Legacy, that part of the grid was destroyed, or at least annihilated, from the fusion between Clue and Kevin Flynn. So I was like, okay, we're gonna have like maybe the idea will still exist in there somehow. Maybe there'll be another person who I say like uprises or something like that. Or there'll be another like person that will eventually take on the mantle of Clue, perhaps get to that like dictatorial level of like, okay, we're gonna like the only way to go forward, or the highest level we've hit already is like I'm top dog now. The next place we can go is to go out to the user world. And so I thought for sure we were doing okay. We're gonna basically, it's finally happening. We're finally getting Clue's legacy. In this case, we're going to see programs invade and do exactly what Clue wanted to do, which is make a perfect world in the user world, and basically have the creations beat God, which honestly, with their levels of technology and like their capabilities, is absolutely possible. So I was like, okay, we're going to have a war movie almost, which aptly titled, of course. So I'm like, so the title makes sense. All this,
That's what I thought too from the trailer alone.
While it does pose the okay, it's gonna like I think with the title being Ares, I think it does prompt you to say, well, Ares is the god of war. That does mean, I don't say constant action, but that will mean there will be action. So I don't know if there will be blood, maybe, but I don't know if that necessarily means like we're gonna lose philosophical questions. It just means that they're gonna probably be posed in a different way if this is like a full-on action movie like The Raid or Maranthau or something like that. So in place of that, I'm like, okay, we're going to do that. But then we have the inclusion of Jared Leto, as Carl noted, and I was like, okay, so I don't know this guy from a lot. There's only one movie I think I've seen him in, really, at least as far as I can remember, which was another movie that I don't know if this counts as like, oh, it didn't really do well, which was, of course, Blade Runner 2049. I think he did he was only in there for like a few minutes, but I did enjoy his presence there. And there he was the creator. He was at least in that movie, he was the creator of these like new versions of replicants. So I thought it was pretty funny in a twist of irony where he is now the creation. So I thought, ooh, okay, this is kind of funny that now we're going to go into, if we have these programs go into the real world. I don't know how long this has been going on for. I don't know if we're going to see the start of the programs fooling the humans into thinking like, oh yeah, we mean you either no harm or we're just here as like soldiers for your wars or whatever. I thought the programs are going to be completely independent and just like have their own schemes. Like they're going to allow the humans to use their technology, but then they're going to issue a coup at some point and they're going to like take over or something like that. I thought that's it, rather than just
Order 66.
I mean, they could have come out from the grid as just like with completely throwing hands or something like that.
Yeah,
but that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But with Ares, the title character himself, I thought we were going to explore something. We were going to have pseudo 2049 ideas of what it means to be, a creation of somebody else and independence, especially when you're a program, literally, scripted to perform a set of rules. And so I thought, okay, we're going to have like again, like I said, a semi version of like, what is it? Somebody, the Pinocchio story of becoming a real person in a way, or at the very least, the machines are a machine having more emotions than humans do in this. So we do none of that, which is perfectly fine. But again, this is another one of my what I'm going into the film thinking with the introduction and the stipulation of, forgive me, fellas, you got to remind me. It's been a while, it's been a week for me, but what is it that the time limit? They instruct like a time limit on each of the programs, which immediately puts clues plans into domination or perfection of the human world at kind of like a problem where it's like, well, we only have this long amount of time before we like basically de-res or our bodies fall apart. With the introduction of that stipulation, that writing mechanic element, that at least gives this movie a time limit, and I think they play around with that pretty well. I kind of like that. So it doesn't offer a lot of like characterization necessarily. So they do things here and there, whether they're in the grid world or they're in like cars or something like that, and they're traveling. That's the only time they can. I mean, no, that's not true because there's environmental storytelling, but they can get that much character development perhaps throughout this film, and the art for Ares of basically wanting to become not either human or permanence. That's right. Yeah. Is it like, that's the funny thing. Object permanence. There's no, they may not be able to retain them. What does Flynn say? Kevin says something about like anti retention or something like that. That's pretty funny. I think that's permanence. Excuse me. I think that's pretty funny in a way. But no, it is funny by the end where he becomes, permanent, and Athena looks at him and it's like, infinite basically, or zero, or, incalculable of like how long he has. And it's like, I could come back many a time. I thought I kind of like that boast anyway. Anyways, okay, let's go on to like other general thoughts. Eric, where do you want to start?
Oh boy. Okay. So there's, from all the reviews I've seen, I haven't looked at a ton of them, but of the ones I've seen, there seems to be a negative consensus for the most part concerning this movie. Whether it's people who are new to the franchise or people who are like me and Carl and have kind of grown up with this franchise. Either way, there's a lot of negativity. And a lot of people are repeating the same criticisms. And I'm curious what you guys think about them. So the main criticisms I hear over and over are, the story doesn't really bring anything new to the Tron universe or world, that it's a very redundant story for the Tron universe. A lot of people have said it's like a remake of the stories in Terminator 1 and 2. People accuse this movie of not really having a plot, or interesting plot, I should say. Yeah, so a lot of people. Oh, and then of course the biggest thing, especially for fans of the franchise, just that they wanted their true sequel to Legacy and to get a bunch of answers to questions that were left open, and we hardly get any of that. And then just for a cherry on top, I mean, there's more, but people love pointing out that Tron is not in the movie. But what do you guys think about any of those? Like, agree or disagree with any of those points that I have heard repeated ad nauseum? I have yet to find a review that overall likes this movie.
One thing that I do have to refute and almost do I reject your hypothesis. Is actually one. I didn't read it, so that seems pretty not very professional of me to do. But I almost thought it was clickbait. But was it an article? No, I think it was a YouTube video. That's what it was. It was a YouTube thumbnail that talked about how this movie Tron Ares was pro AI slop or something like that. Like Disney is being pro AI, like using for the use of artificial intelligence either in movies or just in general. And I reject your hypothesis. I think that is incorrect. Yes, in a way, you could call programs AI. Obviously, ISOs also might be the same thing, but I don't know. If we can kind of argue this in a way, I don't think this movie necessarily is about AI or being pro AI necessarily. Because I took it more as like the monster, or at least the creation, wanting to get away from what it initially was to be, which is a weapon in this case, and wanting to be human. Now, maybe I'm brainwashed. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm not exactly sure. But I don't think this movie is about positive portrayals of AI. Like, see, this is what we want to happen with AI. I don't know about that. I don't know if any of those are intended in the film. I don't know if those ideas are scattered throughout. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I've only seen it once, so I can't comment on that. But I reject this. I feel like that was just clickbait for me to, go on a podcast and, kind of just debate over this, but have at least an intelligent one, hopefully at that. What say you fellas? I want to hear what you guys have to say if that is the case, and then I'll probably answer your questions as well, Eric.
Go ahead, Carl.
Okay, well, there are two parts of this. Most of the time when people refer to AI slop, they are not just talking about being pro AI. They are talking about using AI to replace actors or using AI generated stuff in a way that is poorly implemented. So, there are two parts of this. Is the movie pro AI, and did this utilize AI slop or the traditional, definitions? There are two parts of this. I did not see any evidence of AI slop here. So in the ad campaign, the materials, so I don't think that is the case at all.
Well, let me say, Carl, before you continue, I don't know, the YouTube video Isaac's referring to, but just from what I heard of how it's described, I'm wondering if what they're trying to say in that video is perhaps this movie as a whole, not that it's utilizing AI in that type of way, but maybe they're suggesting that this whole movie and the premise and everything is supposed to be like a red pill propaganda for, being pro AI. I mean, that's the way I took it, just based on what Isaac described. Of course, I have no idea, but
okay, yeah. Well, that's why I'm splitting it into two parts, right? AI slop is one thing, pro AI is another thing. So on the pro AI side about this, I think that is them trying to be subversive, because as we all described, the title implies war, and the title implies, AIs are coming into this world to destroy us. And here comes a warrior from the grid that was, evolutionarily, created to fight in the war. And he shows up and he likes rain, and he likes looking at fireflies and that kind of. So I think, from the pro AI standpoint, they were trying to be a little subversive / radical, in terms of having what was portrayed as a war machine come into the world and just really fight for life. I think that is, what they were trying to do.
I agree with you, but then that also lends to the Terminator argument. But go on.
Well, it's not that we haven't seen this stuff before, but I just think that's kind of where they were going with this. This is Disney too, folks. So you're not going to get like this is not going to be hardware, right? When the AI comes in and starts going absolutely crazy and trying to dominate humanity. It's not going to be Colossus, the Forbin Project.
It's not going to be Maximilian in
Black Hole.
Black Hole.
Well, technically it was Reinhardt, but anyway, yes. So so I know Disney has not gone hard that way, anyhow. So I assume they are trying to show us the heart of it. And we've seen plenty of examples of where AI goes rogue and goes bad, and particularly in modern society, there's a growing negative connotation to it. I think this was their way of trying to say, hey, look, AI is a tool, and the tool amplifies the will of the creator. And we see two creators in this series, in this movie, right? We see one that's kind of got dark, intentions, and one that is trying to help, is trying to do, help humanity. And we start, we see how that intent magnifies once you mix in the AI. So, I think that's what they're going for here. And again, this is my beef with all the Trons. I can see what they're trying to do. It is just they always seem to fall just short of really bringing these points home. With Legacy, the idea of what the ISOs were about is actually very rich and very important. The idea of artificial life forms that are evolving from the computer technology and that they have independence and that kind of thing. The idea behind what the ISOs were is actually very exciting. But the way that they described it and the way that it was implemented in the movie was so thin that most people didn't even get that that's what was going on. They didn't understand what the ISO was. So they kind of raise these questions, but consistently throughout the Tron universe, they fall a little short in terms of really hammering home that point. It's not like the Matrix where you really can bite on the philosophical story that they're trying to put in there. It's always kind of ethereal and wispy in the background. So.
What I hear you saying, Carl, or what I hear you describing, correct me if I'm wrong. So for the mainstream audiences, probably the reason why Legacy and then even worse, Ares didn't really make the box office Disney wanted was, although they had these elements in them, they didn't really resonate with general audiences or mainstream audiences, like with something like Matrix or even the Terminators, the first two movies. But at the same time, though, while I agree with that, basically, for me, there actually was, a fair amount of stuff in Legacy, as you described, just it was confusing to the general audience, because probably if you ask most people walking out of seeing Tron Legacy for the first time, tell me what an ISO is, probably almost no one could give a sufficient answer. And then even worse, I think that same effect happened with Ares, because I haven't heard anyone else really talk about it, which is all this stuff that is in the movie that people didn't really see. I mean, because they were just, turned off by it in general, didn't feel like it required them to pay attention to what they were talking about. Because for me, I saw those messages in Legacy, loved it. And to me, Ares went even further for those who cared and were paying attention. I actually think there's a ton of stuff going on in this movie philosophically. It's just not reflected in any review I've seen or heard.
To answer your question, Eric, by the way, of the reviews of there's no Kevin Flynn, or at least, there's no Tron in here, and other such reviews of that's not in the grid, or at least not fully in the grid. I saw that more as another air quotes fresh start where they wanted to have a clean slate of like, well, this is the movie we're talking about. That was 15 years ago. They're not trying to forget the past, but they're definitely saying like, listen, we have to just move forward with this project. And again, maybe the hard thing to say is like, yeah, they're Disney is trying to make money off of this franchise. Yes, I get that, but there is at least some ideas. I think you two really, and many other fans like have say, I like to see this movie succeed. It's like I said, it's I think similar to Blade Runner 2049, which hey, that was a failure. That was a commercial failure. It was great, but lauded by the critics. I don't know what the critics are saying about this movie. I kind of hope they're the ones that are like, oh, this movie's actually good because it has like some of these like philosophical elements in there in the background.
They are absolutely not.
Dang. Okay. Well, that's a shame.
The critics are absolutely not for this movie.
Dang. Okay, that's a shame. I mean, it's not. I'm not asking for like 90%. I don't think this is a 90% movie personally, but I do see it similar to 2049, where I feel like there is a story in here that is on that same level of sophisticatedness and very thoughtful storytelling. But obviously, because they have that, like I said, permanence like issue in this film, it has to very be like quick, and we have like an action movie to make.
I think 2049 reviewed so well by the critics, despite its box office failure. I think because like the auteurish and like filmmaking at its finest, like from a technical point of view, was all there 100%. And for those people who were like professional critics or take movies seriously in general, it was all there. It was all laid out for you. It's very clear if you were paying attention and engaged with that movie, like everything was laid out. Like there's a lot to think about, a lot to reflect on, a lot of interesting ideas with showing what our relationship with technology in general could be like in 50 years or whatever. So I think that was more of a traditional movie critics could get into, even if they're not into sci-fi specifically. This movie is not that when it comes to filmmaking from a technical point of view. And while the messages are there, it's not laid out like a normal, serious, critical movie as it is in 2049. I think this movie lends itself, like if you have no passion to it, if you don't have any vested interest, it lends itself into the things that are discussed in this movie Ares as just sounding like technobabble, unimportant. I don't need to pay attention. Oh, we're just creating plot devices to make some cool imagery and to listen to this cool soundtrack. And so, yeah, I think that's a sharp difference in why critics react very differently to 2049 versus this one.
Yeah. There's also, a visual quality. I mean, I just want to reiterate, when we talk about 2049, that was an amazingly dense visual world.
Yes.
And they paid a lot of attention to the artistic storytelling, visual storytelling. It was a quiet movie. There's lots of long shots and that kind of stuff. So they were, doing something unique with the visual storytelling that we had not seen in quite a while at that time. We're using modern technology to bring that back. That is not Tron Ares. There were some interesting visuals here, but everything in Tron Ares to me felt a little rushed, and some of these philosophical broader ideas that are buried here are underneath some things that are kind of rushed, a little superficially presented. And so, like you said, Eric, there's something there, but you have to look around the visuals. You have to look around some of the rushed storytelling. You have to look around some of the unnecessary exposition in the dialogue to try to get to it. And not everybody has that kind of patience. So,
yeah, and I think the critics kind of wrote it off, just based on the trailer, just from opening minutes of the movie. And yeah, but because I was super engaged both times I watched it, I was picking up stuff. But again, I was like crazily focused.
Yeah. Let me say this, because again, it's really a mixed bag. It's hard because there's stuff that I actually really liked about this movie, and there's some things that were really problematic to me.
Oh, I'd love to hear this.
Sounds like I'm harping on the problematic stuff, but let me just mention something that I actually liked. Okay, so I know I said that the story seemed like it was rushed. I think a big part of that has to do with the unnecessary macho exposition that goes on in this movie. Right? There's a way to deliver a line. There's a way to say things that you can be quick and you can be clean about it, and you can imply things, and it conveys an emotional message, or it conveys the message effectively. They are constantly using cliched lines in too many words to say things in this. I know what they're getting at, and I know where they're trying to go, but there are too many. It's the dialogue is a little too exposition-y, a little too much, too wordy, when fewer words could have done it in a way that's a little tighter. So on one hand, I feel that too much exposition. There was too much, and the way that the lines were delivered. Again, like I said, macho exposition is the only way I can describe what this characteristic was. But on the other hand, they used some very interesting plot devices to just move the story along, which I thought, again, so there's this weird dichotomy where the dialogue slowed things down, but the mechanisms moved the story forward. So yes, the permanence code really brought an urgency to the scenes where we had the characters, and I thought that was good. I recognize it for the kind of the plot device that it is, but not bad, right? That is an interesting a problem to have, and a motivation to have for these characters, that they can only stay in our world for a little while, and why that would be a tough nut to crack. I think that was an interesting problem to have in there. When Ares shows up, and there's the car chase early on when he first appears in our world. Appears in a more static way, I guess. The fact that he had all of the main character's background in his database, he'd hacked her personnel file, or her personal file. There was the need for that long, drawn-out getting to know the two characters, and how do you feel, and let me tell you about my sister. It was actually kind of funny when you see the delivery of the line, because he's doing all of the work. Because he's a machine, that in that one little frame, the exposition made sense, because he's just firing off a psychological analysis of her, which technically the kind of thing like ChatGPT would do. They're sitting in the car together and they're having a moment, but instead of it unfolding the predictable, long, pseudo-romantic kind of way, he's rapid firing. This is your bio, this is what's going on. Oh, yes, and I know about your sister, and this is what's going on. It's kind of funny, but it connects them and moves the story along in a way that is accelerated, in a way that made sense in this universe. And I hadn't seen that done before. So there are things like that where, surprisingly, tools of the story and the scenarios that they have, they're creating these motivations. They're creating these points of movement that move the story along in a way that you would not expect, given the other things in it. And I was surprised and impressed by that. So that is one thing I just was sneaking in there that I did.
I love that scene, by the way. But I'm curious, one or two examples of like the macho, unnecessary expositional talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not 100%. until you tell me, I'm not 100% sure what to imagine.
Okay, well, it happens a lot. First of all, her burrito eating buddy
Yeah.
and cowboy PR guy are the worst at it. The worst at it.
Okay.
So those two,
Seth is the burrito guy, and AJ is the face of the company.
yeah, those two. I mean, because I know what they're going for, and in a bit the lead villain is also Dillinger is also that way too. There are ways that you can get across what their personalities are like without being so verbose and heavy-handed the way that they were. There's a way that you can show it without having to say it. And those guys used a lot of words. Lot of words.
Okay. I thought that might, they were on my suspect list.
So they're the worst examples. But even the lead, there are a couple of moments where she is doing some things and she's using more words than she needs to. It's just as simple as the scene I really liked, and I was really excited about it, is when she snags Athena's cycle. Okay, so they did the little loop de loop there at the top of the thing, and she's grabbed. She ran Athena off with her Ducati, and now she's trying to fire up the the Dillinger cycle, and she's going through the buttons and the commands and the controls and stuff. She's clearly frustrated. You can see that she's having problems. But she starts to say things like, "Darn it, this is really hard." I can't remember exactly what it was. She didn't have to do that, right? We can see the problem, we can see the stress, but it's her saying it that slows the scene down, and it's that kind of thing. So even it's not just the guys, right? I call it macho exposition because it's got that kind of edge to it. And it's predominant with the dudes, but even this is across most of the characters. Even she has it where she goes a little further than she needs to, and like, we're right here, we got you. You don't have to do all of that. But anyway, so it comes up in many places. But
that's interesting because I don't remember that dialogue. I'll definitely be looking out for that.
Well, now that I've said it, you'll be like, ah,
yeah. But the two guys,
three guys.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily a fan of Seth and AJ, their characters.
And Dillinger.
Hold on. I'll get to Dillinger. Oh, yeah. The way they spoke, the lines and everything that they had, and just their sensibilities, they had that token, not just mainstream movie vibe, but also not exactly, but kind of reminded me of that MCU comical dialogue, which I think, kind of originated with Joss Whedon with his television series. And then, of course, he did Avengers 2012. So they're kind of talking in that kind of way, which, no, I'm not a fan of that at all.
Now, let me tell you, I want to say it. There is a way you can do it. So it's about the style. Because, and even in the Marvel Universe, there are some characters that are really funny when they're doing it. And then there are some characters that it's just grating and it's unnecessary. So it's not that it's occurring. It's the style. You got to get it right to pull it off. And I am not convinced that they successfully pulled it off.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're like, there are some in the MCU who do it well. And then there's those who don't. And these guys just feel like carbon copies of those who don't do it well.
Didn't do it well, right?
Yeah, and I agree with that. Dillinger, on the other hand, Julian Dillinger, I thought he was quite good at what he was doing and, what his character was meant to be. Because, this movie, there's certain things that in this movie that remind me a lot of Spielberg's Ready Player One. And with Dillinger Jr., or he's not Dillinger Jr., but because that guy was in Legacy. But anyway, the younger Dillinger, the new generation here, he's a little bit, in terms of motivation and whatnot, he's a little bit like Menlinson's character, the baddie in Ready Player One. Whereas in Ready Player One, his character seems like 100% twirly mustache villain, which is fine or whatever. I mean, different kind of movie going on there. In this, I got more like the youthful, not genius, but entrepreneur who's like trying to build his own legacy, being like the third generation coming in the family business, and like his struggle and whatnot. I think it was kind of like what they were going for with Lex Luthor in the Snyderverse, except I think this was a better version of that young entrepreneur who wants to take over the world one way or the other, metaphorically or whatever. But this was a better, more realistic representation of that to me. And I thought he played his part like perfectly well for what it was supposed to be.
All right. Well, I see what he was going for, but like you said, he felt a lot like other pseudo villains. I absolutely felt Snyder versus Lex in there. You're right. Just the way he was walking, I felt that. I felt what's his name from Iron Man 2, 3, Iron Man 3.
What's his name? The guy from Memento and Prometheus.
Yes.
I can't think of his name.
Right. Yeah. I felt that in it, but I think they did it better. But
you think Iron Man did it better?
Yeah, the villain.
Oh wow. Yeah. See, I like this better than the Lex or the Iron Man. But okay.
I no, not for me.
Okay.
Isaac, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think that the villain was believable? What do you think?
Adrian Killian, I believe, in Iron Man 3 by Guy Pearce. There we go.
Guy Pearce.
Thank you.
First off, Julian. Okay, I don't know if this is just like Evan Peters, but like he was looking mad. Well, I don't know what it was. I don't know, it's a tattoo. I don't know if he has tattoos. But
I think those were for the movie.
It was the movie, yeah. But it's just like, sorry. He was looking a lot like Jack White of the White Stripes. I was like, "What the flip does he look like Jack White? That's insane!"
Yeah, I see
like they both look like similar. So that was the biggest distraction for me. Of like, I'm just seeing Jack White as the bad guy in this. I loved his Master Control voice, by the way. That was fun. Well, not a Master Control voice, but him as like the user to
the God voice. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, where he kind of looked like Master Control in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Would Ares technically be his program, by the way? Like, would he? Because that's another thing that at least not irked me, but at least thinking back to Tron, everybody in the real world has like a Tron counterpart,
right?
And so I didn't see Eve doesn't have one, Adrian or Seth don't have, but that's not important. I know that's not important, but at least with Julian, is Ares his program, or is that something separate?
I have an answer. I don't know if Carl wants to answer first.
Well, go ahead, Eric. I'm here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, in essence, yes, I believe he is like his program. So, of course, the next question is, why doesn't he look like him?
Exactly.
Well, I think because unlike the previous programs in the series who we saw visualized, like the original Clue in 82 and the rest of them, I think those were like the dedicated like passion projects of their programmers or creators, the programs we've seen before. This one I think is different though, because one imagines that Julian Dillinger has been making all these programs in the Dillinger grid, like Athena as well. So he's not it's not a passion project of the same kind as the other ones, because he's just making a bunch of programs. And I think it's actually kind of works that it doesn't look like him, because he's just trying to make the ultimate program, which philosophically he knows is not himself. So, he's creating something that is definitely not him. And we see the training sequence in the beginning, which I really like, which starts off like either version of Ghost in the Shell, but then sort of like visually shows you in a way, metaphorically, like AI deep think training or something. But I like how it gets the point across, and it doesn't take too long, and you understand what's happening. And I think that's part of the irony is that he was definitely making a program not in his own image, but what he was going for was like the perfect weapon of war, but he unintentionally failed and created something else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I forget his name right now, and he's not coming up in the top cast, but it's definitely him. I recognized him right away. I had no idea he was going to be in the movie.
Same here.
But I imagine a lot of people were pissed because I think a lot of people were excited just because he was going to be in the movie, like people who are fans of those video games, etc. And just from what it looks like to me, like his part is exceptionally short and brief in the movie. I feel like he probably had more to do in the original treatment and was either cut out at the production stage or cut out in the editing stage. There had to be more going on there, and like maybe somehow their bond somehow started Ares to think, outside of his program, outside the box. Now, the way he's discarded and expendable, yes, we know how that plays in the movie, but I feel like there was more there on the page and we just didn't see it because that is too bizarre.
I agree because I couldn't figure that out. Look, they are elevating many lesser known actors in this movie. There are a lot of folks that we haven't seen in other things or that are not that well known. They get prominent roles in this movie. So I would think that somebody like him who has a bit of a pedigree, it has some stuff, if he's in it, that they had something more for him. So I'm with you. I'm guessing.
Yeah, he got big.
Right. Something he got edited down for some reason.
Yeah, he was Matt Smith in Rise of Skywalker.
Nice.
He isn't even in that. But with Dillinger, though, yeah, I do like where they're going with this. So he, I think, has echoes, at least what I was piecing together, he has echoes of his grandfather. I think he has that, the same ambition that his grandfather had, or at least, I won't say domination, but just definitely he wants to, have get the better, but find out this permanence code. He really this is the race. This is the arms race right now that we're dealing with. I don't know if it's domination of the world, but it's just more to be in control. That's the biggest thing. He wants to be in control of this. He wants the contracts. He wants to be able for his company to succeed. It's, it's capitalism, whatever. Yeah,
it's definitely capitalism.
But with his mother, questioning that's not just that's not Dillinger Jr. No, I'm not going there. I assume it's just the sibling, right? Murphy, that Cillian Murphy's character would be the sibling as well, Gillian Anderson.
I'm assuming too, and probably in some other content we'll find out they had different mothers. But
that's a good point. Actually, I never thought of that.
I mean, that's just what always happens when you read the novelization or the comic tie-in.
That's true.
But anyway, yeah, I'm assuming they're siblings.
With her though, I really enjoyed her presence in here because she was the moral compass. She was the one who probably saw firsthand the errors of her father. Saw okay, this is probably these were mistakes that my father made, and she is closer maybe to Eve's side. I say Eve's side, but she's closer to let's kind of handle this legitimately. Let's not have all this ostentatious and bombastic nature of kind of over the top thinking or whatever, being like a mad villain from the 19th century or something like that. But no, she's just trying to keep him level headed and say, no, you must you do keep on the right path. This is not how well, that's bad parenting on her part, I guess, that he got her. She raised him to be this way. So I don't know. That's bad parent. Whatever. Who cares? But she's there to keep him in check. And once Athena, shows up and kind of removes her from the equation, that's when, obviously by that point, Julian has lost control of that. But yeah, he does follow the same path that his grandfather unfortunately went down, which was losing control. Not even that, losing control to the machines, letting the machines take over in a way. And this time it's even worse. I actually think this is not a remake. Again, I don't want to trigger you Eric, what I said about like, having, it's not the same thing as like Alien to Aliens. I'm not going to go there, don't worry. But I think they are taking a lot of ideas from Tron 82. I think there's an idea, but it's all reverse. They're doing things in reverse, which I think is kind of cool. I don't know, subverting or inverting in a way, but just...
I agree on the reversal part, but I actually think Legacy is more of a soft reboot / retelling of 82.
That's fair. You are correct. I can't
because Legacy, as much as I like it, to me, to the original, is kind of like how The Force Awakens is to the original trilogy, or A New Hope specifically. And that doesn't bother me with Legacy, but that to me is the more similar retelling, like beat for beat with the story.
Now that's okay. That's fair. Let me be clear. Like, I'm not saying this is a remake or anything like this is like, again, like The Force Awakens, where it's just like a soft reboot. I don't mean it that way. I think they're taking ideas from the original and then like invert or reversing, as you say. I think you're right. Maybe I'm just like going too much into it.
Yeah. Because I think they're doing the whole George Lucas, it rhymes like poetry, for the space opera. Whether you compare the prequel trilogy and the main character arc to the original trilogy, or if you want to play with the sequels and do that as well, it's definitely taking the themes from the first movie and or Legacy and then twisting it around. So instead of our protagonist, or it's a whole other conversation who's the protagonist in this movie. I mean, it's mostly Eve, I believe, but Luke obviously gets tempted by evil and then goes good, and then we have Anakin's story. We all know how that goes, and then we have Kylo Ren, which is another variation of bad, and then redemption at the end. Spoilers for the sequel trilogy.
That's statutory limitations. It's fine. It was 2019. That's a good. So actually, here's my question to you too. I think Eve is a character. I don't know if she grows necessarily. That doesn't mean it needs to happen. But I think, is she a MacGuffin, but not a MacGuffin at the same time, because she knows something that Julian doesn't know, and like, what Ares and Athena don't know. And so therefore she's like, an important piece of like literary fiction. She's the important
what is the
piece
thing
of
you're
story.
saying she knows that they don't know?
She knows, she knows the permanence code. She cracked the code. She figures it out.
I don't think Eve is the MacGuffin. Maybe the permanence code is the MacGuffin, and she possesses it. But I don't think Eve is a MacGuffin character.
Okay. I'm
just
labeling her as. I was just wondering, is she the MacGuffin because she knows the permanence code?
I say no, but
okay.
Carl?
I'm going to say a tentative no, but she could have been more fleshed out.
This is true. I agree.
Oh yeah.
Because if she is the protagonist of the story, I mean, again, right? That's another thing with some of these modern stories. Trying to figure out who the star is gets to be a little messy. But again, with exposition, they told us what her emotional challenge is. They told us what her feelings for her sister were. They told us what the challenges she had within the corporation were. I don't think they did a great job of making us feel it. I
agree with that.
There's a way that could have been revealed to us, that a little bit more subtly.
Show don't tell.
Yeah, definitely, because with her it was always tell. And I did not, so I know that she is trying to live up to the challenges of her sister. I know that she misses her sister and wishes that she were there. All because this stuff is explicitly stated in many ways throughout the story. But I wanted to feel it. I wanted it to come out in a way that was more natural. And I do not feel that was done.
Yes. And so I agree with what Carl just said, but I also want to say more on it because, if people can't tell by now, you two included, I love virtually everything about this movie. If I had to find an issue or something that could have been better or made better in the movie, this is the thing, like the thing we're talking about right now. Eve's character, because if she's the protagonist, and pretend this was nominated for Academy Awards,
Clutch thy pearls. Sorry.
I'm almost certain that Eve Greta Lee would be nominated for the lead actress category, and Jared Leto would be nominated for Best Supporting Actor, even though
Really?
in the movie it's like the reverse. Because the reason I say that is because the Oscars do that all the time for the exact situation that we're talking about. That's the reason I say that.
What? All right, look, I'm not even going to start with you on this.
No, this is just a side comment because.
All right, look, but in the hypothetical scenario that you are describing, it is not because she is in a placeholder position that she would have gotten this award. She would have had to have brought something in order.
Of course. That's why I said, yeah, the hypothetical is if this was going out for a bunch of Academy Awards.
Right, but at the same time, I just want to make it clear, it is not because, she's the woman in the supposed lead role in this movie that she would have gotten it. She would have had to have delivered something to make it the case.
Yes, I'm sorry for not mentioning that. I took that as a given.
Okay, all right.
Okay, but that was just a side comment.
Right.
Okay, so she's our protagonist in the real world at the very least, if not the whole story or meant to be. And so this is the one thing that I think is lacking in this movie, if I have to find something. And that is because she is our real world protagonist more than anyone else. I mean, shoot, even the villain kind of overshadows her in the real world. But anyway, I don't want to introduce too much.
Which villain? Who are you talking about? Dillinger?
Dillinger Jr.
Okay.
Or not Jr., but the younger.
Yeah, Dillinger.
So if she's our human point of reference in this movie, then I'm going to compare her to Sam Flynn and then the original Kevin Flynn, obviously in 82. And everything Carl said, like, I agree with because it lines up. Because with Flynn, Kevin Flynn in the original, we get that, the Earth stuff, the real world stuff at the beginning, and we can see him like struggling to retrieve like evidence of like his authorship of the programs. We see, and I forgot this even when me and Isaac were discussing the movie because I saw this just the other day. I completely forgot that in the real world sequences, when they're chatting, him and Alan and I forget her name in the real world, and I've been calling her Lori, but she's actually Yori in the grid. But anyway, they're talking and they talk about how like she's Flynn's ex in the real world, and now she's dating Alan in the real world, and so we are shown this through their interactions, like natural interactions, and we get the backstory for Kevin before he goes into the grid. And then Sam, we actually see the flashback sequence of when he's a kid, and that all makes a lot of sense. Yes, there's some exposition, but that's for people who have never seen Tron 82 with the CGI Flynn talking to his son. And then we see his little caper that he does at the beginning of the movie. This all these instances of the real world stuff in the first two movies help us understand the characters without literally just telling us or going through their emails or work memos,
Right.
or news broadcasts, although we get some of that in Legacy too for the setup of the world. But anyway, but really Eve doesn't get any of that at all. It's all in news bulletins. It's all in
Video playbacks.
Yes, it's all Ares going through her phone, basically.
Yeah.
So yes, we get to see this little scene of her at the beginning, but it's just kind of telling us what she's doing now. We don't visually see any of her past. We don't visually see her, like, her character traits on display at all. So yes, that is not good. It makes her by far the weakest of the point of view human characters in the three movies. And that is like the only area of this film where I'm like, that needed to be fixed, or that did not do any justice at all for her as an actress or the character. So yeah, that's kind of my only major drawback if you force me to come up with one for Aries.
And let me say something about that, because they had a really strong missed opportunity. And here's the thing, and I really don't know why they didn't take advantage of this, because I think it really would have made her character very exciting and very interesting. It's the throwaway line, and they're not supposed to do this unless they're really, unless they're actually trying to tell you something. Okay, so you remember when she's been digitized and she's trying to decide whether she's going to strike the deal with Ares, and he's about to bring her back into the real world, and he says that you'll be reconstituted, pretty much the way that you were before. He uses a term, I can't remember exactly what it is, but he says something to the effect of, you're gonna be, brought back pretty much the way you were. And she says, "What? Pretty much? What do you mean? It'll be fine. It'll be fine, right?" There's a line like that in this movie that implies that when she is reconstituted, maybe there'll be something different. Maybe there's something that's not quite, not quite the same about her.
Now, where are you taking that? Where are you going with that?
What do you mean, where am I going with that? So all of a sudden, they both show back up in the real world. Now he's got, the chance for the permanence code. She has been brought back in the real world. And probably, as far as I know, right, only the third documented case of that.
Yeah.
So we had Flynn come back. We had
Sam.
Sam come back and her come back. But she was the only one that came back with sort of like janky technology.
Okay.
So, the Flynns came back with the, with the original OG hardcore, biotech that, that the permanence code came from. They came with that technology. This was Dillinger's tech that sucked her in there and then brought her back. Right. So the fact that there should have been something off or something different about her when she came back, they said it. That, you should be the same.
Well, Carl, I think they did say this for a reason, and one is the obvious reason that you're talking about, and I think there's the literary reason.
Okay, what do you mean? Well, all right. Well, so my point is I think she should have had a hero moment at the end of this movie, and I really thought in the big boss battle when it looked like Ares was losing. And, and she was cowering, off to the side, trying to figure out what to do. I really thought that she was going to have a user moment where something about her being reconstituted gave her extra abilities in this world.
Oh, interesting.
The same way that when Flynn in the original Tron movie first realized his user power, when he pulls together that busted recognizer, I really thought they were going to flip it and give her some of the, manifest Tron capabilities in the real world, because now she's been in, a part of both of those worlds and had been reconstituted in a way that was less than the original integrity. I mean, she needed something. And if they did not give her, the development that she should have been given emotionally, character-wise, I really thought that when they brought her back, she was going to have something that connected her with the Tron world in the real world.
Okay, now I see now I completely get what you're saying, and I hadn't really thought of that angle, because I guess I was distracted by the way I was looking at this whole sequence with this character. I mean, everything you were talking about. But that makes sense. I could totally see that. However, I do think they had those lines because she was going to change, and she was being changed by being in the grid, just not in the way you described, more in a philosophical way. I don't exactly know how to organize this entire discussion because I have so much notes on it, and we also have a hard out there in the future. So Isaac, I feel like this is a place where I can now jump into story time.
Okay.
My favorite thing when it comes up in all the different podcasts I do with you guys, because this is what made me really, really love the movie, as opposed to just kind of liking it and thinking it was okay, but the ship has sailed on the franchise without knowing the box office, just in my own head. Okay, so this is the stuff that really jumped out to me, and I got a lot of it on the first viewing, and it was so much more reinforced after my second viewing. So this is all a bunch of stuff that I haven't heard anyone else point out, and again, I think it's because of apathy and people just not really having, and critics not having a good time watching this movie, and so not caring to see what's going on. But I was actually surprised for a movie, that contains the things that Carl talked about earlier, like a lot of unnecessary dialogue and exposition at times and all that kind of stuff, which is there in the movie. I was surprised at the amount of non-spoken signaling and suggestions. There is a lot going on in this movie, visually, conceptually, from a storytelling point of view, and actually in audio only as well throughout the whole entire movie. And I guess no one cares about the movie, so no one has seen or spoken about this stuff. One of the first things that jumped out at me was the initial chase, and where Eve ends up on that dock there before the chopper comes and everything, and before she goes into the grid. I thought, as watching it the first time, well, no, because I didn't know what was going to happen yet the first time, but for sure the second time I knew what was going to happen. I thought, of course they're on a dock. Not just because that's where you get on a ship, but because they're near a body of water. And I thought, of course they're near a body of water, because it has the same meaning here as it has in all the other stories, which is a combination of either crossing into a different world and or the idea of baptism or rebirth through water. So I thought, oh, of course they're here by water. And then another thought I had this more recently was, she has the flash drive and she snaps it and she drops it into the water. And I think that wasn't only just symbolic for the same reason I just stated, but I think that it was a deliberate callback to something that happens in Tron Legacy, which is what we see as the end of the original Tron program in the grid in Tron Legacy. If y'all remember, he falls into what looks to us like water in the grid, and he just sort of fades out. And I think that's important. I don't know if I should explain that now or later, but I think that's important, showing that both times, because I think it has relevance to the grid, the Dillinger grid, and eventually Ares, his character and his change. So there's that right there. Let's see. Now, I think they harp on that line about, the whole McCoy transporter sequence, where they're talking about, I don't know if you're going to be, well, technically the same. Theoretically, I think he says. And I think the reason they harp on that is not just for the little comical moment, but it's because when she does cross the river into the grid and then sees the grid, talks to Ares, they have their little chase on the grid and get out together. She actually is changed at that moment, but she doesn't know it yet, and we as an audience don't know it yet, because she is a different person post-grid.
You mean emotionally?
Not just emotionally, but in her mind, in her thinking, in her character. And then they also harp on that line there and later in the movie when he says, "Can I trust you?" And she says, "I'd like to think you could." And they harp on that too, because that is key to everything I'm talking about. Because she has her doubts. She's like, yeah, I mean, she literally says, "I want to trust you," but realistically, she's thinking, no way, because you're basically like the second coming of Hal or something. That's too dangerous. And the key moment now, because Eve's on her character messianic arc, Ares is on his own separate messianic arc, and for out of the two of them, Ares is the more messianic. And so for Ares, when he has his major character development, he has other before and after, but his major one is when Athena comes up on them when they're trying to, get Ares into the grid, OG grid. And, he sees she's there and he sees what she's doing and he realizes that as soon as he goes, like she's going to probably kill them or whatever. And when he decides to offer himself as like a self-sacrifice, that is the moment when the camera like looks at Eve's face, and that's the moment where she realizes, even though she still doesn't even realize it in the movie, but that's the moment where she subconsciously realizes that she can trust him. And not only that, but that moment he self-sacrifices, that's when he like continues his arc, his messianic arc, because he essentially dies in the way Harry Potter dies in the last movie. He essentially, his life is ended, and all his time on OG Grid is like him being sort of in the limbo in between the rest stop, kind of like Harry in the last movie, until he is reborn, just like Gandalf the Grey going to Gandalf the White. And now he is a true program who fights for the user. And of course, that's how Tron is in this movie, actually, because Tron is in Ares. And I hope they write a novel or release a comic to solidify this and make it clearer to people, because it has something to do with Tron falling into the water in Legacy. Because in that movie, it's not, they say it looks like an ocean or water, but it's not really, that it's some kind of void. And if something goes in there, they don't really know where it goes.
It's the source.
Okay, the source. Perfect. And so, it's almost like, I forgot what they call the neural network on Pandora in the James Cameron Avatar movies, but it's basically like returning, to the Tree of Life or whatever the thing is on Pandora. Anyway, I think what was in the original treatments, and by the way, Ares, the story, I think they said they took some ideas from the original Tron 3 and then, of course, added in completely original stuff. But I understand it's a melding of the original story and then new stuff. But anyway, I think there was an essence of Tron that was put into the source or something. And even though Tron as we knew him no longer exists as a program, his essence, his spark is floating around somewhere. The part that's confusing is that this is the Dillinger grid, and who knows, maybe Dillinger just made like a flash copy of the Tron Legacy grid and then, commandeered it himself. So maybe that's how the essence of Tron lived. And I think somehow the essence of Tron, which should have been explained or hopefully will be explained in some other content in the future officially, the essence of Tron, I think, is what made Ares not be what his creator intended. And and then that's how he becomes he who fights for the users, which is the legacy, no pun intended, of Tron, the program, throughout the trilogy. And so it lives on. Like the torch has been passed in a science fiction-y, techie, computer kind of way. And then, of course, Eve does not, I get the idea. That's pretty cool. Like if she was augmented in some type of way and came back like special, quote unquote, as a human. But instead, what she did was repay the favor because she saw what Ares did when he attempted to sacrifice himself for herself and her wisecracking sidekick. And she repays the favor. Instead of leaving just to protect herself, she is actually a human who fights for the programs, which is exactly what Kevin was in the first movie, reciprocating in a way for Tron, because he technically fights for the programs. And that's what makes Kevin and Sam and now Eve special, is that where most humans in this universe just look at programs as expendable, discardable, you know, not on the same level as like humans and whatnot. These are special humans who like respected programs in their own way, and we see that very much with older Flynn, like in Legacy and in Uprising, or at least his philosophy in Uprising. And so that is how they're all connected. And there's a lot more this kind of stuff that I saw. Those are the main points. And as far as like subtle audio cues, I did not even realize this the 2 times I watched it. It was my friend who couldn't stop talking about it on my second viewing, who he noticed all this stuff. I completely missed all of it. But he was telling me, what is with all the audio Easter eggs in this movie? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, aside from the obvious cues that come from like 1982 and stuff, besides that stuff, he was like, what's with the other stuff? And I was like, what other stuff? And he's like, they play one of the themes from Disney's Pinocchio movie in here, and it's a theme about wanting to be real. They use like one of the audio cues from Aladdin during like the marketplace scene, like early in the movie. There's a Pac-Man sound effect from the original game when grid domain of Kevin like illuminates, and we see like that similar look as like his 2001 dormitory. They play a Pac-Man sound effect, and he said there was others. I can't remember, but the ones he cited all seem to be like from the 80s and 90s. Like I think he mentioned other video games. I can't remember if he said like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. I think he might have said something from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But he was saying like there's just like audio Easter eggs throughout the whole movie, either Disney or 80s/90s stuff. And now I can't wait to like go back and look for those and like a bunch more.
When I was in the theater, some of that I picked up because I saw it in the big Dolby theater. Mm-hmm. And so the sound for this movie was fantastic. But the music and the sound effects, some of these cues I picked, I didn't catch all of those, but some of those I did notice. I definitely heard the Pac-Man. I definitely heard some of those other ones, but I did not get all the musical cues. That's amazing. I do need to go back and listen to that.
Not to mention all the Depeche Mode talk and stuff, and using it in the movie.
If you like Depeche Mode,
I just can't get enough.
Yeah, if you are like Depeche Mode, this movie, yes, definitely.
Oh, I already loved Depeche Mode, and as a kid in the 80s, that's the music I was exposed to the most, besides the obvious things like Michael Jackson and stuff like that. So that was like the stuff that was on the radio a lot where I was in the 80s. And then, of course, they picked that song, which came out in 82. Good timing for years. And then just his explanation. So, Isaac, do you remember when you made a comment about music last time we were recording Uprising or something else?
Yes.
And did you recognize that? Because I said, you'll notice something in the movie.
Now, is this in Nine Inch Nails soundtrack, or is this in like audio cues, in the movie?
It's conversation in the movie. It's not in the Nine Inch Nails.
Okay, because I've listened to it twice. I'm like sure, there's like 8-bit sounding, sound effects in some of Nine Inch Nails soundtrack, but I don't know if I couldn't.
No, it was a conversation in the dialogue.
Oh, okay. Well, the Depeche Mode, yeah, that made sense. But like, I thought you were talking about like Aladdin and Pinocchio. I'm like, I can't recall that in whoever you're like. Wow, I didn't pick up on any of that stuff.
I think I don't know because I didn't really hear them personally. I suspect they use little samples or something. Like the Pac-Man thing, but it's not in the Nine Inch Nails score. No, I was talking about, you said something last time we were recording about comparing like pop music to Baroque.
Oh, yeah. No, it's sorry. I usually I kind of emptied my mind out of what I said there, so I can't.
Yeah, it was the end of one of our conversations, and I forget why it came up, but you said something like, I'm not gonna compare pop music or to like, the structured Baroque, that has like,
Oh, it was. Oh, yeah, jazz and jazz and
that's it,
classical.
jazz. Like I'm not going to compare them, but and that's why you made me think of the scene since I had already seen the movie. You made me think of the scene where Ares is talking about, yes, I've listened to Mozart and he's fantastic, but for my tastes, it's Depeche Mode, and he gives his reason why, the pop hooks and the electronic sound, the melding of, digital technology and da 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 da. I love that scene before you mention anything, and then when you mentioned what you mentioned, I was like, oh boy.
And I also like that scene with him kind of pausing. He'd be like, that was the moment where I said, okay, this is AI. He just had his moment of feeling, like it's, maybe basic is what you want to call it. But I did like that where he suddenly is like, I can't, express, I could use logic to dictate why I like this. But at the end of the day, it's just a feeling, like, I just like it. And that was at least one thing that made him more human and less robotic.
Yeah, and even though I liked the scene before we had the conversation, but then the way you were comparing, and you just reminded me how you were saying how Baroque is more structured and like locked in, whereas jazz is sort of like ordered chaos. And in a way, like that's exactly what Ares was trying to say. So I thought, oh, that's perfect, because I didn't really think of it in that way until after speaking to you. And you're right, though, that is important, because it definitely shows them having like a novel feeling or opinion. But remember, that's important dialogue too in the movie, because that is really the linchpin for this ghost of Flynn to be convinced, yeah, man, like, okay, I'm going to give you the code. That was the moment where he realized, okay, just like how Eve had to have her moment of when she could trust Ares, that was the ghost of Flynn's moment. Yeah, and there's a whole lot more to this stuff. I could talk about this all day, but yeah, this is what I already enjoyed the movie. All this type of stuff that I'm seeing and hearing just took me on another level. On the Nine Inch Nails score, let me just say quickly, I too listened to it a little bit because it came out about 2 weeks. It was released on digital platforms about 2 weeks prior to opening night. And I listened just to bits and pieces. I didn't want to hear too much. And obviously, the Tron Legacy Daft Punk soundtrack, I loved immediately out of the gate. It was such an important part of that movie for me. And obviously, Daft Punk wasn't going to be doing this one, but I was hoping I would enjoy this one, or this one would speak to me too. It doesn't have to be the same, but I was hoping. And just listening to samples ahead of time, no, it did not inspire any confidence in me whatsoever. And I do like Nine Inch Nails music and whatnot, and Trent Reznor's score for Social Network, whatever. Kat, where are you? But anyway, I just was like, oh no, this feels weird. This is making me think even more I'm not going to like this movie. Like this, the way this music feels combined with the trailer, I thought, oh man, this is going to be terrible. But once I've watched the movie with the music, I just love it all. All the Nine Inch Nails stuff, the stuff vocally that contains vocals, the stuff that doesn't, all the mood setting. Every time it comes in, like it just feels right. Just like this movie, for the world looks visually most similar to Legacy, obviously more than 82, even though it's not exact, it's different. But just like how the mood of this movie overall is, to me, darker than the first two, even though the first two have their own dark elements, this overall feels like a different type of vibe of a movie. And I thought that was perfect with the Nine Inch Nails score, because it didn't duplicate the Daft Punk stuff, but it was still enough in the vein while at the same time being different. And I felt it was the perfect accompaniment for this movie and how it differs from Legacy, as the Daft Punk score is for that movie. It's just absolutely perfect. Chef's kiss for me. And now I've been listening to that score independently of the movie. I've heard it at least a dozen times. And now I pretty much love every single track. I didn't expect to like it so much. And I didn't expect it to just overall make me love the movie that much more, but I really do.
Well, I don't have a complaint about the score. I also really enjoyed it. But what I do have like a minor complaint over is the cinematography. I think that in combining with the soundtrack from Nine Inch Nails, I think that this movie doesn't do the soundtrack justice visually. Other than like obviously Inside the Grid, I kind of lament and I kind of wish that we had. Okay, maybe not because it's a different, like, the Legacy is going for something completely different with its, as you mentioned, like a pseudo David Fincher tone or filter over it, which I really enjoyed.
Yes,
this one was very clear. And it's funny when we're at the Dillinger production plant or whatever, secret base, and then we go out and you see like forest everywhere. I was kind of like, I want a filter. I kind of wish there was like a filter to this because it was kind of reminding me of Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and how that one doesn't have great audio in it. It has I don't think it has good soundtrack either to it, but I felt like the cinematography in this movie was very basic, and I feel like you needed some like a filter of some sort to kind of go with what Nine Inch Nails was producing, because I feel like I think the soundtrack is a very good one. I hope it gets an Oscar.
What
probably
kind of
won't.
filter are you thinking? Like,
I don't know. That's the biggest thing. Of like, I can't describe to you what I mean by that, but I feel like somehow the score was elevating, more elevating than the visuals, and the visuals weren't doing the movie justice, or doing the soundtrack justice. Excuse me. I wish the look of the film was like, I don't know, it was not dark, but there was a style to it potentially. It's very basic, but I don't mean that in a negative way.
So, I saw the movie both times in 3D, once IMAX and the standard screen the second time. So I don't know exactly what the movie looks like in plain 2D. Although, I don't know if you guys saw, but on Disney Plus, there's like a 4.5 scene from the movie that you can watch, which is the first scene in the Dillinger warehouse complex. You get to watch that whole scene if you want. Anyone can right now on Disney Plus. And then there's other scenes that they show in some of the VAM, like little short scenes from the movie. It looks fine to me on 2D. I mean, without the 3D and in full color. It does have that Fincher look in terms of tonal quality, which I've described it multiple times on this podcast, kind of looks sterile. And I think that makes sense for this movie. Out of the three, that it has that look. It goes along with everything else, I'm thinking. But in 3D, it's the first 3D movie at the cinema I've seen in a while. And it is up there on I have long said that obviously the James Cameron stuff is the best 3D stuff you can watch. Hugo by Martin Scorsese, which no one saw in 3D, which is phenomenal in 3D. And Tron Legacy, which I saw 2 times in IMAX 3D back in 2010, was a phenomenal 3D experience because it's unique, because the way it plays the 3D and the experience is not the same as Avatar. It's something different, but really cool. And then this movie is now on my list of my short list of must-see movies in 3D at the cinema, if possible, because it was a super cool 3D experience, but also not the same as Legacy. It was like its own thing. It was more subtle than Legacy, but just like those other movies, Legacy and Avatar, etc. Those movies are not the same in 2D. They can still be enjoyable. You can still like or love them, but they're not the same. And this movie fits that category to me. It is absolutely not the same without the 3D. It's not just used in some hokey way, like something's coming at your face. The way the digital world works, the way transitioning into the in or out of the digital world, even just like the Firefly scene, there's a lot of stuff that just really worked. And then seeing Vancouver in 3 dimensions through all the city chase scenes and everything looked incredible. It looked absolutely incredible because, I've seen all those other 3D movies, the ones that I think are really well done, and none of them just show like everyday, street views, architecture, etc. I just hadn't ever seen anything like it in a 3D movie. And so I'm sure in 2D, this movie is lacking in visuals and in color grading throughout much of it. It's just I didn't get to experience that version of the movie. What I experienced was 3D utilized really well throughout the whole thing, and I thought maybe only the grid scenes would look really cool in 3D like Tron Legacy. Nuh-uh. Whole movie. I would have to watch it again and take notes to like note all the reasons why the 3D absolutely enhanced the movie in all aspects. Even if you don't like the movie, it's just like one of those things like Avatar. It's meant to be experienced in 3D on a big screen to get like the director's intent. So that stuff I can't judge in 2D, the stuff that you mentioned, but I actually was surprised at some of the unique camera movement here and there throughout the movie. Because this director is known more as like sort of like a working director, I didn't expect to see visual flair of any kind necessarily. And I actually saw a lot of outside the grid camera movements that didn't need to be there, but really elevated the movie. So I was just very, very surprised. I actually thought this movie had its own visual signature, just like the previous two had their own visual signatures, but this was unique, and it worked for me. I've almost said everything I need to say about this movie.
I just want to say, Isaac, I got your back, because visually, I felt something was lacking too. It's kind of what I was hinting at the beginning. Well, so Eric, I respect your opinion on this, but I'm just gonna say, I really feel it too. What Isaac is talking about. I don't know. All right. I don't quite know how to articulate it either. And when I say this, is going to seem harsher than it actually is. But look at the titling credits, not the opening, but when the credits for the actors and whatnot show up at the beginning of the film, it feels like from a TV movie and not from a motion picture. There's these things that seem smaller with the way it is filmed that I think don't do the movie justice. And I agree. I feel the mismatch between the visual and the music, because the music really, really moves things in this movie. The music really motivates an emotional response. It moves some pacing along, and to me, the visuals kind of struggle to keep up. I don't mean the special effects. It's something about the color. It's something about the framing. So I'm 100% going to agree with you on that, because I feel it too, and it's hard to articulate.
I think I know exactly what you've been talking about the whole time with the look being off. I've seen it a million times in many movies, especially newer movies, and I grant that is there. But what you're talking about is not seen for multiple reasons when you watch the 3D version, not just because of the 3D, but because of the filtering on the lenses and everything. So that stuff is like obscured. And so I'm sure if I watched the whole entire movie in 2D, that stuff would grate on me and bother me a lot more. Just like when I watch Avatar, I watch it at home, obviously in 4K, and I still like the movie. It's definitely not the same though at home. And I'll just make a lazy metaphor real quick. It'd be like if you were at Disney or wherever on one of those interactive rides where like the whole thing moves and the visuals change and everything. It'd be like if you're on one of those rides that is designed to have all those mechanics working, but for whatever reason, the gimbal's not working. So it's not rocking the way it's supposed to. Everything else is there on the ride, but not the rocking. And if you took your friend who had never been on it, but you have, you'd be like, well, I don't know. Did you like the ride? But it's definitely not like this. Like when it's in 100% operation, like you're definitely missing something. And I really think this movie is intended to be seen in 3D for everything to come together. The music, the story, the visuals, and yeah, but it is what it is.
All right. So my response to that is the same response that I had, I'm realizing now, to Tron Legacy, which is we shouldn't have to work this hard as the audience. Now, I mean, I hear the things that you're saying and the points that you're making, and you're right. Again, it was my same criticism with Tron Legacy. You can see there are these pieces. There are the pieces that are there, these elements, and in your mind, you are putting together, oh, this is what the meaning is there, or this is what's going on there, or this is what's happening here. You're piecing all that stuff together in the background. But it really should be, and there are plenty of good examples of where it's actually on the screen, when it's in the movie, when you can see it, and when it comes out. And every time with Tron, the concept is there. The meaning is there. There's something richer there behind the scenes. But as an audience, we're left, it's like Tron IKEA. At home, we're assembling it ourselves. We got an Allen wrench. We got all these pieces laying around, and we're trying to put together from the pieces that they, some of them are really there, but we shouldn't have to do this when we're watching the movie. The movie should be able to.
No, you're right, right, and that's a fair point of view, because obviously movies like original Jaws, original Star Wars trilogy, original Matrix, obviously none of those movies require 3D to get the full effect.
Now, I'm not just talking about 3D now, but come on,
I know what you're saying, though. I know what you're saying. I'm just using the 3D example. I know what you're saying besides the 3D, besides...
Yeah, because if you make a movie and it's only good when you see it in 3D, that's a problem.
Yeah, I understand. Gosh, I wish Legacy and Ares were both better in 2D than they are, because of other aspects like acting or writing, etc. I wish, but it's just not the case. And yeah, I do have 3D copies of Avatar and Tron Legacy, and if I do watch them on my old 3D television, they are much better home experiences, that without a doubt. But again, who has access to that? Like practically nobody.
Their modern take on 3D printers was really impressive. The effect of what that looked like was really powerful and was a lot of fun.
I didn't see that coming. And I don't know who did the art direction for this movie. I know it's not the same guy who did Legacy, and me and Isaac talked about him a lot because he designed all the vehicles and whatnot in the grid in Tron Legacy, and he also did the same role for Tron Uprising, the animated series. And he actually won a Primetime Emmy for his work in the Uprising series, surprisingly. And this is a different person. I don't know who it is. I need to look more into it. But did you guys... This is another thing I like, which only if you love the movie will you notice. And if you're very passé, it'll just be like nothing. Did you guys notice the detail of the vehicles from the grid in the real world? There's something that they all had that I noticed, and it's just some of that real world mechanics that get put in like Star Wars prequel movies and other things, like little details that just people don't notice. Because it's just...
What is it? No, what is it? What you see?
It's most prominently seen in the light cycles in the real world. But do you notice they have sort of like a glowing sphere in the center of them?
Okay, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's just to look cool. I think it's deliberate design, because they're meant to be gimbals. And it just makes all the sense in the world, because all these vehicles on the grid obviously exist in this plane of existence that doesn't operate by real world physics. So something like a gimbal would be completely unnecessary. But they're adapted for the real world and have the gimbal, and that's how the bike rights itself automatically. And that also explains how they can do those crazy sharp turn movements in the real world, which, are fine in the grid, but that wouldn't make any sense. This is not Automan.
Yeah, I was about to say they underutilized the Automan right angle in this movie. I really ever since Legacy, I've been looking for the Automan right angle. The closest we got really was Ares braking for the kid in the minivan. That was the only one. It's far too smooth, the curves, both in the cycles in Legacy and here. Cut them some slack because it is the real world, but the fact that they had that non-physics break implied they could have done the right angles, and that would have been fun. Yes, there was a strong Automan bite into this movie. I also noted when they brought all that stuff into the real world. I was really.
If you notice, even the recognizer has like a little gimbal glowing in there, and I'm sure probably the armored transport vehicle probably does too. But again, like no one cares because no one cares about the movie. No one cares to like pay attention to it. I'm just like a sycophantic, hardcore obsessed.
Well, you're working mighty hard. You're working mighty hard. I'm just, I hear what you're saying, and I can see what you are saying. But my point is that you have to work this hard, and you can see it, but the average audience member is not going to see all of this stuff.
And even the critics, because again, they don't feel like it's probably worth their time just from what they're seeing. The visuals, the flat visuals, the poor green screen, the poor exposition dialogue. And so they're just like, yeah, we don't care. And I just reminded myself of another 80s reference when I brought up the gimbal. Did you notice, Isaac, the iconic Akira moment?
I was about to say the bike slide. The bike slide.
Oh my God.
I mean, look, that's getting to be the new Wilhelm scream. When you see the Akira slide, I don't know if you guys have
seen, just in the last month or two, I've seen 2 different little story reels on social media where someone just compiles like a sizzle reel of multiple live action and animated properties, just
the bike slide,
rotoscoping. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bike slide from Akira.
Yeah.
Did you notice that, Isaac?
Can't remember which scene it was. Was it when they were doing the initial chase inside the city?
It was on the highway with the bikes, and Ares is trying to catch up.
Yeah, it's right after that scene where she does the cross bus jump like Flynn did in the previous movie, and so the Dillingers are separated. Athena is right after her, going off the road, and he misses the turn and has to hook the bike around to go back to see where the ladies are.
Okay. No, yeah, that's right. I recall this now.
So it's but it's definitely the Akira cycle skid there that we see. So yeah, I noticed that too.
Oh, something else in my storytelling notes I forgot to mention. I just love this whole thing with the Greek names.
I knew you would. Like perk up to that.
Yeah, of course we have Ares, and of course that's subverting our expectations on how we know, the god it represents. And then of course Athena in mythology was the sister to Ares. And did you guys catch the third Greek-inspired name, which is much more subtle and less obvious than the first 2?
Is it the guy from Fallen Order?
No. Well, okay. I forgot his name. I would have looked it up, but I didn't have a chance.
Eve.
Well, Eve is obvious,
yep.
Biblical.
Seth.
Oh my God, I didn't look at Seth either.
Well, that's Egyptian. But
the one I'm thinking of with Greek is actually Julian Dillinger. Julian, the name is significant not only because of its Greco-Roman roots as a name, because it's based off of Greek and Latin word.
Julius. Okay.
Yeah, Julius, but also it's like Juvalilicus or something. Basically, sounds like juvenile in Latin, and in Greek, there's another version of the word, and it basically means the youth. But more significantly than just the meaning of the name in that language, is there was a famous Julian in Roman history from 331, 363 is when he lived. And he's known as Julian the Apostate. And he's significant for a bunch of reasons. But he was actually the last Roman emperor who ever tried to bring back a return to the classic Hellenistic Roman Greek mythology religion. He was actually raised Christian in his life, but at age 20, he completely rejected Christianity and really tried hard to bring back the old religion. And until he was killed out when they were doing a campaign in Persia. He was killed, and he was the very last Roman emperor to ever try to push that or bring it back. And that's why he's called the apostate, because he turned his back on his original religion. And I think, God, that's a perfect analog for the Julian character.
Again, if they got to work that hard, Eric, come on now. Come on.
They did it for me. They did it for me. I freaking love it. I freaking love it.
Good.
I can eat this stuff up all day. This is all my wheelhouse.
All right. I just wanted to throw in the world of 3D printing, one of the greatest challenges is when you have something that is too big for your printer to print, there are little tricks and things that you do to, contort the model or fold it up to make it fit on the print head, on the print bed. The recognizer scale relative to the Dillinger factory.
Insane.
Now, I'm going to let it slide because it all was very cool looking. But I really thought it would have been really funny. There are tricks. If you know the world of 3D printing, there are tricks that you can do to make a thing that's really huge come out of a smaller printer. And I couldn't figure out what it was that they were printing initially. When I was watching the movie, I kind of suspected what it ought to be.
Because of the trailer, I knew it was going to be.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't watch it. That's why. So, I knew what it could have been, but I was like, there's no way it wouldn't fit. And so when I was looking at the blueprints, because there's a scene where you actually can see the rendering before it's printing, I thought that maybe they had folded it up or something, and that would have been really funny just to see it slide outside and then unpack the way that the modern 3D printer things do.
That would have been so cool.
I mean, that would have been true respect for 3D printing physics, because it would have been really funny and would have reconciled how you got a giant recognizer out of that tiny, a hangar that they were in. But I let it slide.
Yeah, they set the warehouse to TARDIS mode, because I thought when he was like, "Oh no, you can't do that. It's too big." I thought it was going to completely destroy the whole entire complex.
I'd have taken that.
Go wrong or something.
Yeah.
Or they could have done some folding thing, or it could have been printed in segments and somehow assembled like a transformer combiner or something.
I'd have taken that too. Yeah.
But you know what the solution could have been in the real Tron world universe? Did you notice how the NCOM printer worked in Alaska? I thought that was cool.
So what do you mean? What's the difference? What was the difference between?
So the Dillinger one, they have the laser set up, in the warehouse, and you literally see the emitted beams, and they construct the thing. And yeah, things are supposed to fit in the work area, obviously, in the Dillinger warehouse. Mm-hmm. But in the Alaska setup, the mobile setup, they have the 3 lasers, and they're set more or less at ground level. Mm-hmm. And they have mirrors that are on these, I don't know the names of different mechanical things, but the mirrors are on these trusses, and they have a pulley system.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The lasers on the ground level, and the height of the mirrors can be adjusted, and then the mirrors can obviously be moved to reflect in different directions. So the laser beams never move on the Alaska setup. It's they follow the mirrors, but the mirrors do all the directing to create the orange tree. And so if they had that set up, if your truss is tall enough, you could literally make the Statue of Liberty, and so that would have been the perfect solution. But
yeah, well, yeah, I think Flynn's laser setup has a definite different physics than Dillinger's did, because if you remember from the original Tron movie, when it ingested original Flynn, or when it reconstituted the orange from the original Tron, see the orange tree, the symmetry, when it reconstituted the oranges, it would draw the cube around it, not relative to the size of the laser. So,
true.
So
it has mirrors on the inside, is what I'm thinking.
That maybe
DSLR camera.
It's magnets. It's all magnets.
Okay, magnets. And people would be pissed, and so would I a little bit. if I don't, I only have a few things to say, but reactions on Grid 1.0 in the movie.
Yeah, that was pretty to go back.
You probably cried, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect it until, there was context clues in the movie about, 10 minutes prior. Like once they went to the mock-up of Kevin's office inside Incom, I was like, oh no, they're not. Oh no, they're not. Oh no, they're not. Yes, I started freaking out. And I kept telling myself, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. And then they did. I'm glad they at least.
So were you in tears when you saw Bit?
Oh, I miss Bit. I miss Bit. I always liked Bit. And,
I mentioned how he has like a static cameo in Legacy.
Yeah, that doesn't count. That does not count.
Yeah, now we get to see the real Bit. And of course, a Bit gets destroyed in Uprising. Spoiler.
Boo.
Sag.
But okay, so my thoughts were, okay, they're doing this. Cool. I like how, Ares' face looks like it's shot in black and white.
Right.
Like the original.
Yeah. They took
Love it.
They took it back.
At first, it didn't make sense to me that the original grid where they did the light cycle was right there next to Flynn's tower. But maybe they also, just like how they moved his office in the real world, maybe they made that as like a little monument and put it right there next to Flynn Tower on the Grid 1.0. A shame that as much as it has the aesthetic, obviously, of the original Grid in the movie, you can tell it's digital, though. As opposed to, I was watching Tron 1 earlier just with the sound off, and how they're just like these amazing, I don't know what they are, digital portraits or whatever, digital mats, or maybe they're hand-drawn mats, but they have a certain flatness in the original movie that is lost in the digital representation. That's fine. But really, my only big lament about it was how cool Ares is there, but there's not really anyone else there, and it's completely empty. And I get it; it makes sense in the movie, but it gave me that feeling of when you boot up like an old multiplayer game or MMORPG or even an out-of-date PS4 game, and you log into the servers if they're still active, like you get into EverQuest, and you're just walking around. Or when I used to get in Second Life in the later days, when I would get Second Life, and you're just walking around and there's nobody else. There's no users. There's no NPCs. It's just like this empty digital world, and that I lament. But I guess, it makes sense for the movie.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, it was good to go back.
Really cool.
Kevin Flynn has become a star child. I was like,
yeah.
Whether that they don't need to explain like what happened in Legacy. I don't think it's a Noodle incident, but I do wonder, if he has transcended and has become like transhuman in a way where he not through not through like uploading his consciousness, but literally like the opposite of what this movie's trying to do, which is bring digital images or bring the digital into the real world, materialize it so that we can solve resource problems. This instead is like a sort of light version of the transhuman idea of a digital conscious from like humanity in a way, or a human getting their soul into the digital world. Yes,
and I love the way it works. I love the way it's explained. Again, I'm doing all the heavy lifting for the movie in my brain, but it's perfect because, the way, when Ares is like, how are you here? And he's like, you tell me. And his explanation is basically like the explanation for the afterlife in Coco, where as long as someone lives in your memory, they sort of technically still live, even if they don't anymore on this plane of existence. And that's basically how Flynn exists. This isn't like he was actually in there the way he was in the previous movies. This is like a ghost after image before. Because Flynn exists in Ares' memory, he's able to exist in Grid 1.0. And, of course, he had the conversation, and he talks about at the end before Ares leaves. That's the funny thing about the name is it's called the Permanence Code, but it should be called the Impermanence Code or whatever. And I couldn't stop thinking about it in the movie and afterward and since, because by actually getting the permanence code, that is actually the opposite for a program. Because if a program remains on the grid, it is essentially immortal and permanent. But by going to the real world, presumably he has some expiration date. We don't know what it is. And actually, that's how people are in the real world. I mean, human beings, we have a temporary existence in this world. And the fact that Flynn remains, he's the exact opposite of Ares, because, like you said, Isaac, because he's been digitized, or it's the digital memory of him, he actually has permanence in a way. And it made me think of, what was it called in Star Trek Generations? The Nexus. But this reminds me of like Whoopi Goldberg-Guinan and Jean-Luc and Kirk being in the Nexus, because after I saw that movie back in the day, I thought, well, because of how the Nexus works, we can bring back Picard or Kirk anytime we want in the Star Trek universe, because we just pop out of the Nexus. And that's basically what's happening with Flynn. It's a digital copy, essentially. That actually is permanence. And it's semi-permanence if your family remembers you. But if you're like a historical figure like Abraham Lincoln or Julius Caesar, that is its own permanence in a way. And that's what they're showing in a digital way. I love it. I just love this movie too much.
Yeah, I'll take it. It all the pieces are there.
It at least with Kevin Flynn still existing inside of Tron 1.0, it reminds me briefly, if I don't get all the math, it's just the concepts. It might be a like shout out, or at least making reference to quantum mechanics and physics with the collective consciousness idea of, if we all are in a simulation, as long as somebody like knows your memory, like it's a weird thing of like, okay, because you exist, therefore I exist. It's a weird, again, I don't know all the math and I could be getting that wrong. Apologies, listeners.
It makes sense.
But that's also what I thought of as well, where it's like, oh, if Flynn's here, like, I want to meet Kevin Flynn. Oh, there he is.
Well, it's like taking the philosophical, theological idea of a heaven or heavenly plane of existence, but just showing it a digital version, which is a lot of what Tron is. I mean, as a trilogy or as an IP, it's taking a bunch of real world and religious concepts and expressing them in like a visual and conceptual digital language. I mean, that's kind of what all the movies are in their own ways. And
I also like how Flynn is, okay, not just Force Ghost, but he's also, people could probably see him as senile. People could probably say, oh, Bridges' performance is near like senile, like he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I liked it. It almost seemed like, because he has now all his, like, whether, if he is truly there or not, let's just, for the sake of just the argument, let's say he's there. It actually is him somehow, because he probably has like maybe near omnipotence, omniscience, whatever. Because he like knows like maybe the ideas of this universe, as I said, like a star child. He kind of has that childlike quality of, you'd think he'd be this wise old sage, which he is, but he kind of either acts like either childlike or just he's not all there. I kind of like that, where it's almost like you know everything. So rather than being like one note neutral or anything like that, he kind of has like this childlike quality of like, I know everything, and so now I've kind of reverted back to like a young child perhaps, but one that acknowledges the universe and it now just goes about being whimsical, or at least being like innocent in a way.
Yeah, and seeing Flynn, Kevin, in the digital world in all three movies in different stages of his life or aged appearance, it's like seeing Dave in 2001 in his little mind palace going through the stages of life. And I agree with everything you just said, Isaac. And the fact that he does look so much older and he is almost senile, again, reminds me of VHS tapes back in the day, making a copy of a copy of a copy, or you would, I would make so many copies of games that would fit on an old floppy. And then every once in a while, you get corrupt files. They get copied, so it's not exactly the same. It degrades. It doesn't run right. The copy will crash. And so I see this Flynn also as like metaphysically a copy of a copy of a copy. So his aged appearance makes sense because he's not all there. The original is not all there, obviously. So him looking aged makes sense to me. Also, the way you described his character sounds exactly like you're describing the Doctor in Doctor Who. If he had a super old appearance to match like his nature, God, I'm sorry. I just love everything.
Now, here's not to, undo everything I just said. I guess he is set up. Oh, by the way, the beginning with almost not, I think it's new dialogue, but recycled scripts perhaps from Legacy, where, we see a younger Kevin Flynn in 1989. I'm pretty sure that was a jab at everybody for saying like, okay, we have now, this is our current level of deep fake and, facial de-aging. Here it is. That's it. Whatever. I guess he's not.
I think that was unintentional.
Are you sure? I don't know. I feel like that was a jab at all critics.
I think that's almost like my retcon of Tron Legacy to make it make sense. Why Clue doesn't look right.
Interesting.
I think that's another version of making it make sense.
Is Kevin Flynn Deus Ex Machina?
Well, in its most basic terms, I'll just say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the bigger one in Legacy, but as Eric described, he is the holographic copy in this one.
Okay. Just making that clear.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my last Star Trek references before we get to rating this, I noticed the programs, when they're in the grid, they have some kind of vocoder on their voice, but when they're in the real world, they speak more naturally. And when they're in the grid using their grid voices, it sounds to me like the exact same modulation as the ILEA probe in the motion picture. It sounds just like it. But anyway.
Okay, my last few things. One, interesting how Julian has like a Dillinger escape plan at the end to avoid all the responsibility that he's faced now, that he's it's all in his hands, unfortunately, and so he goes in there and then becomes something that I was surprised I was like, wow, that's interesting. But maybe it also answered my question of where's their program potentially. That's also maybe a hint of like a sequel drop or a sequel later on if they wanted to. I liked the evolution of the fighting where they used the lines, where they used the light cycle or just the light beams to act as solid objects to, I guess, enhance their movement in fighting. I think that was pretty cool, where they would use staffs and they would like have the trails go and then they would like jump off that. I think that actually lent itself well. I wish we had more fight scenes like that. And did you both notice that the composers of the score were also in this movie?
I found out later.
Okay.
From seeing on the internet.
Carl?
Was one of them the pilot?
Both were the pilots.
Okay. Now, I did not realize that was actually them. All I knew is I could see the call sign on the helmet.
Oh, what?
One of the fighter pilot. So I didn't know if it was actually them, but I saw, it said Resner on his helmet.
That's funny. Okay.
So I didn't know if you could make out if it was actually them. I just thought it was a tip of the hat or a tribute. But if that was actually them, that's pretty cool. That's very cool.
Credits, like literally credits. Like just what this is why I stay for the credits to make sure.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, of course, you mentioned the thing I forgot to mention, the sort of mid-credits ending, which I like. But then, of course, we all thought this before multiple times. Like, there will be no more Tron movies.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a
now I hate to, we're already waiting for the conclusion to Legacy, which
15 years later
would have gotten if this movie had done well, because we have the ending also in the real world in this movie, where with Ares, which they should have just stated that he was in Greece, but no, he looks like he could be in Morocco. I don't know.
It was Mexico City.
It was Mexico City, or
yep.
They might have filmed it there, but you're saying like they actually like there was something to to say it was Mexico City.
I don't know. I didn't know what the postcard said, but
It looked very Mediterranean to me, but like I said, like North Africa, Mediterranean, or like wherever they set that movie. What's that character that Dwayne Johnson played in Snyderverse?
Black Adam.
Black Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looked like that kind of place to me.
Egypt adjacent or stand-in for Egypt.
Right. Yeah, that's how it looked. But to me, it just would have fit if it was literally Greece. But that whole sequence with him, though, kind of reminds me of the end of Dark Knight Rises in the cafe scene. But not just because of the visual, but because the whole concept of it's supposed to be like that Tron is like a legacy, like an uprising that could be the mantle could be transferred to another person. So I like that. And that's one of the few Uprising oblique references. And also in Uprising, like when we were on episode 16 or something, they show a double helix. And I was like, okay, that's also probably an unintentional reference, but
to Legacy, right?
No. Oh, it's in Legacy, I think, too. But it's specifically in Uprising, like episode 16. Mm-hmm. They're like examining a double helix on the grid. So I'm using that to fit all of these properties together, even if tenuous. Okay, there's more I could have talked about. Like, at first I lamented how in the previous, or especially in the first movie, we get to see someone play an arcade game, and then we go into the game and see the light cycles. We didn't get the grid, which is something I was a little bit hoping for in Ares. I mean, the game grid, but at least we got the heist, and so we got to see like a transition of the real world infiltration, hacking. So that was our version of the grid, I guess, in this movie. But moving on to rating the movie, unit of measure, anyone?
Oranges.
Out of 5.
Orange tree.
Oranges. Let's do oranges.
Oranges work splendidly. For anyone who's watched One Piece or read it, I could not stop thinking about the orange tree because that's an important symbol in One Piece. But anyway, so I'll just go ahead and go because everyone already knows what my rating is going to be.
6.
I should take the time to convert this into hexadecimal or something.
Nice.
Or binary. Well, I guess in binary, what would it be? 100 maybe in binary. I haven't converted binary in my head in a really long time. 100 out of 100, which would be.
Are you trying to give it? Are you giving it 10 or 1?
5 out of 5.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I think
5 is 100. In binary.
What? Oh yeah, 5. Wait. Oh, you're doing 5. All right. Sorry, I thought you were doing 10. All right. Yes, that's fine.
5 out of 5. Of course. Let me just look to the old Rotten Tomatoes before you guys share. So with the critics, Tron Ares, by far the worst of the Tron movies. Well, actually, the critic score on Legacy might have been worse, but no, what am I saying? Anyway, 53% with the critics. That's the tomato meter. With the audience, popcorn meter, 86%. I wish I had written them all down like I meant to. I meant to write down the critic and popcorn scores for all the Tron movies. By far and away, this is the only Tron movie to not only have a good audience rating, but a strong and powerful audience rating, because they absolutely do not with the first 2 movies. And as noted last time we recorded Best Picture, now Rotten Tomatoes has 2 blurbs that they've generated for their movies, one for the critics and one for the audience. The critics blurb says, "A sensory feast of vivid neon hues and a hypnotic soundtrack. Tron Ares is gorgeous to behold, but too narratively programmatic to achieve authenticity and authentically human dimension." What's ironic is AI probably wrote this, and that was weird. Programmatic and authentically. The audience blurb says, "Setting its colorful visual effects to Nine Inch Nails' rollicking beats, Tron Ares is like strapping into a stylish thrill ride beamed from the future. Who would like to go next?
Carl, just in order of how we introduced ourselves.
Out of 5 oranges.
Out of 5 oranges, I'm giving this 3.7.
Oh, okay.
3.7.
Yeah, we don't normally do fractions beyond a half, but in this digital world,
Yeah, I'm busting the human out of this. I got to do it. do it.
What would that be in
it
binary?
makes sense in the context of this movie. Oh God, I can't do. I've never tried to do decimals and fractions.
No,
in binary.
not fractions and decimals.
But yeah, whole numbers are difficult enough. All right. It makes sense, obviously, based on. By the way, I'll ask Isaac this too. Carl, how would you rank the 3 Tron movies from fave to least?
From what to least? From what?
Favorite to
favorite.
least.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Sounds good. Isaac, your rating in oranges?
In oranges, I am struggling between one or the other because I enjoyed the theater experience. I really did. I actually enjoy going to a movie theater for once in a blue moon almost. And you know what? I gotta say that while this movie did have 3D imagery, I say 3D, but it had there was a lot of CGI. I didn't have that this feels. I feel like it was polished. I feel like
yes, except for the backgrounds that were digital.
That's okay. Yeah, in air quotes Alaska. Yes, I kind of saw it. I was like, okay, I don't know if they're actually. I mean, it looks like she has some breath on her. But anyway, Eva. Excuse me. But anyway, this movie didn't have the problem that most other modern movies have with CGI reliance or CGI necessity. Excuse me. So it didn't. Well, it is a digitally looking film. I did enjoy it in a theater experience, especially in 3D. I didn't have a problem with my, I didn't have an equilibrium problem or anything like that. In my brain, I mean, I didn't have a balance issue where it's I feel dizzy or what. No, I actually I think the CGI was very well integrated and it was finished, especially with the recognizer at the end.
Yes.
So, I mean, yes, when they're in the grid, it's a digital world, but what else do you expect? So that I could suspend my disbelief over, and it wasn't I feel like I'm looking at unfinished CGI. No, it looked really well integrated, and it was also quick. They weren't in the grid for too long, which probably also helped them save time with money. Potentially, that's why they said it in the real world.
In a way,
but for me, yeah, theater experience, I want to give it a 3.5, but I actually want to give it a 4. 0.5 out of 5 oranges. Sorry, 4.0 out of 5 oranges. Excuse me. Enjoyed it. I do want to see it again. I did I do like this movie. And as for order of films to rewatch, or at least enjoyability, that's hard. That's definitely hard for me. I'm not a ranker kind of guy. I usually like to do things differently, but you're forcing my hand. I'm going. Maybe 3, 2, 1, maybe, but we're talking I don't know, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 of this is not there's no gap. It's it's all very steps.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you said? 3, 2, 1?
Yeah.
Wow. Quickly for myself, because I was going to give a preamble. This is Eric in 2025 October, because at least right now it actually is 3, 2, 1 in my head too. But that could change any day, any time, just like I was with the original Star Wars trilogy growing up. More realistically, it would be 3, 2, and 1 all on an equal plane, except I like and dislike completely different things with all 3 movies. But yeah, honestly, I can't wait to rewatch this movie 100 times the way I have the first 2. So, yeah, and certainly, maybe after I calm down, maybe my order will be 2, 1, 3. But at least today, it's 3, 2, 1. So there you have it. That was our Tron adventure. Who knows if we'll ever get to do another Tron podcast? Yeah, because amazingly, the first time I started podcasting in a real way was in 2009, and so it's been 16 years, and now I'm podcasting on Tron again. And who knows if we're still podcasting in 5, 10, 15 years, somebody else will finance a fourth Tron movie. Or maybe they'll do like Transformers and do like a Tron ONE and make it digital. Hey, why not?
Yeah.
Why not make it an all digital taking place in the grid movie, like Uprising, but different.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Oh, and the reason there could be a chance is because I heard a lot of reviewers say, Ares did even worse than Legacy, because at least with Legacy there was people who grew up and had a nostalgia for the first movie who showed up for Legacy, and a lot of reviewers said, but there was no one who grew up and remembered Legacy, so it doesn't exist for Ares. Au contraire, like movie essays, like on YouTube, I've been shocked and surprised how many people who are approximately 29, 31 years old who say they saw Legacy when they were 8 or 10 years old, and they said that was the movie that made them start taking movies seriously.
You may want to check your math on that one.
Yeah, the way I cite, I might screw up their present age, but just like how I cite Pulp Fiction, or people cite like E.T. or Raiders or Star Wars from back in the day, those are actually the good videos. They're not necessarily reviews. That's why I didn't mention them earlier, but they're like essays breaking them down. And apparently a lot of young reviewers who I already respected on YouTube, Tron Legacy was something they really cut their teeth on. So what I'm saying is this silent group of people who grow up with Ares, one of them, if they get into a position of creative power 15 years from now, they could make the animated Tron sequel or whatever. So there you have it. Thank you, Carl, for joining us. I'll definitely tell you when we do some more things on this podcast or others that may pique your interest.
Appreciate it. Sure.
I'm glad you were here to close out this 6-episode extravaganza, or seven. Sorry,
you're giving Tron the props it deserves. It's well earned.
All right. Yeah, and our first time doing a series on this podcast, a television series. Who knows? Maybe there's some other television series we could do. Acolyte? Just kidding. Closing out the show today, this is Eric.
This is Carl.
This was Isaac.
And until next time...
I really wish that the traffic in the movie was reflective of the traffic in real life that most of us here have to deal with.
End of line.
Prognosis negative.